Let's deal with the valley. We'll scale the same. Don't you know you got wild blood running through your path. Don't you know you got wild blood running through your wild blood.
And welcome to Genesis Speaks.
Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Genesis Speaks. My name is Ndi Imane Rapuri and I'm the host of Genesis Speaks. Well, I've not been with you guys for like 2 weeks. Sorry about that. Yeah, I did mention to you the last episode that I'm not quite sure when I will be back with another episode. I'm sure some of you guys have been waiting for check-in. Well, you know, it's coming soon, don't worry. We're gonna do February and March, obviously. Still haven't, like, we just began March, so there's still time for us to catch up on what happened in March and everything else. But yeah, it's been quite hectic, so that's why I couldn't obviously come to post an episode with you guys. But yeah, this week I'm back with another episode that is filled with, you know, informative like, it's gonna be very informative and very also engaging. And you know, at Genesis Speaks, we speak about like our own experiences and open up to, you know, what we have been through and just reflect on that. Well, as you know, I'm not alone. I am with my regular guest, Jabulo. How are you?
I'm great and happy to be back.
Yes. How have you been?
Oh, I have been good. I've been good. A lot of very exciting stuff has happened recently, guys. And yeah, just I'm in a really good space right now.
Can you share with us what are those good things?
Well, see, we just moved and sure, there might be a few hiccups here and there, like trying to deal with the building manager, taking care of some of the things with the actual unit itself. But it's a nice place. The neighborhood's great, and you know, the rent price is also fantastic. So yeah, it's been a great trip.
Amazing. Yeah, no, it's been quite hectic. So you could understand, like, moving and all that. Oh, you really just also getting used to the new place, and you know, also just because, as I said, like, okay, I've never said this, but like, when you're like, your space, your home is your spiritual home. Basically, that's where your spirit is. That's where you sleep. That's where you think, and that's where you get productive and all that. And when you move into a new place, it's quite important to solidify your presence and also remove what was in that place, because most of the time you'd move in a place where there was people already staying in that place, and it can be like a little bit, a lot, okay, not a little bit, can be even more than that in some places as well. So just also dealing with, you know, trying to get used to the area, trying to, you know, also just, I don't know.
Yeah, adapt and acclimate, you know,
Yeah.
like trying to get what's it, like, I don't know, like normalized to the space, like to the area. Oh my word, guys, I do not know the difference between left and right, up and down when I'm here. This side is like so confusing to me. I'm constantly getting lost when I'm driving. This one just lets me get lost because she thinks it's funny.
It's a mess. But anyways, yeah, no, that's the whole thing with moving and all that, and, you know, finding yourself in a new place, new spiritual home. Basically, you have to, you know, just also be in the right space and I don't know, cleanse your place, your spiritual home. And cleansing, it could be different for many people. You know, many people cleanse their places in many different ways. So yeah, so we had to also just have to deal with that as well, with our own way of doing things. And yeah, do you have any other things to share that you've been up to, maybe?
Well, I mean, one of the things which I'm not sure if this has come up on Genesis Speaks It, but I've been kind of tapping into my more creative side since moving, and I've been making a commitment to paint more. But funnily enough, I paint slower now, because I'm trying out something I've never really done before, and that's painting landscapes. Funnily enough, for all of the years of painting I've been painting, I've never painted a landscape. So that's been fun, but also very slow, very slow.
That's interesting. Well, with me, I've been, quite also been busy with my NPO work, but mostly I've just also been doing a lot of my DI work. And, I just spoke at an event. Thank you, Theophilus, for inviting me to a wonderful event, Queerhood Circle, the first Queerhood Circle in Braamfontein, the Forge. So it was an amazing conversation that, just different people talking about, what was the topic again? It was on how, we have normalized like the notion of that being queer is unnatural and un-African, that's a wrong kind of notion. And we were just discussing the social, political, and the psychological impact of that notion and what it does to us, So that was quite fun. I really enjoyed myself as well. And I'm also getting ready to speak at the 25th SAYOPSA, South Africa Industrial Organizational Psychology Association. So I'll be speaking there. So I was just busy with my abstract as well to get ready for that talk. It will be around July. I'm not going to disclose us yet of what I'm going to talk about in the whole thing, because they need to approve the whole topic first and. But as soon as everything is like set, then I'll let you know what I'll be talking about. But it will be fun because I'll have to do a research on the topic that I'll be doing interviews on that. So that will be quite fun for me. I'm looking forward to that. And it's a full circle moment for me, because this is the same conference that I worked in around 2017, 2018. You would remember I started the podcasting in 2018, so you'd remember maybe then speaking about this conference that I'm going to work in, the SAYOPSA. So now they're on the 25th, it's celebrating the 25th conference this year, so it's going to be big, the Jubilee, and I'm looking forward to speak there as well. So it's been exciting. I can't stop talking. It's been a lot of exciting things going on, but I'm really interested to hear what has been happening with you guys as well, like what you guys have been up to, what you guys have been doing. Like, have you been drinking your water? I have my water here, and I am minding my business. Have you been doing that, Njabula? Have you been minding your business?
I have been minding my business.
Good, because you can't. If you drink your water, all you're gonna be doing is going to be minding your business, going to the toilet, and minding your own business. So, but if you don't drink water, then it's a problem. I'm just saying, it's a problem. So make sure. It's also hot where I live now. It's just fucking hot. It just reminds me from where I'm from. Oh God, it's hot. Like you just sleep naked because it's hot. Anyways, today the topic of today is let me quickly check the topic of today. Well, Njabulo,
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Today's topic is alone but not lonely. Isolation solitude as a type of therapy.
Interesting. I think that's quite interesting. So let's go to the first segment of the show, which is reflections. Let's go. You are still listening to Genesis Speaks. Catch you after the break. Charles, some of my people want to know how to start their podcast.
Have you heard about Anchor by Spotify?
Tell me more.
It's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place.
Please explain.
Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place.
And best of all,
Anchor is totally free. And you're still listening to Genesis Speaks.
Welcome back, guys. And this is Reflections. Well, today on Reflections, we're reflections on solitude as therapy. And I think this takes me back to one of the episodes we did, which was a part of, what we spoke about. That the guest presenter at the time was Sive. Shout out to Sive. Hope you're listening. We were in atmosphere of COVID-19 and a lot was happening, right? So COVID-19, when it started, we were forced to be in quarantine and no one was supposed to go out and all that. And we were like faced with crisis of like, okay, there were people who are like already introverts and had no problem spending time alone and doing things alone and all that. But at that time, when we were all just forced to be alone, it was kind of hard because now you are forced to actually face your demons. And we then spoke about the illusion of control in that space and time wherein you are forced to be alone. So I think it's quite easy when you choose to be alone. And it's another thing when you actually are forced to be alone. What do you think, Jabulo?
I can definitely agree that it is a very different experience being forced to be alone versus choosing to be alone. Those aren't the same things. But there is a lot of value still to be gathered and gained from being alone. Now, there's a reason why I chose the title Alone But Not Lonely. I think that for a lot of people at some point, like you'd said, you face your own demons. Stuck alone with just yourself and your own thoughts, at some point you need to confront those thoughts that you've been ignoring. The things that you keep saying you will deal with later, the things you will like, oh, I'll get therapy for that later, or I can't afford therapy for that right now, I'll deal with it later. Now you have to sit with those thoughts. They're with you every day during COVID, during lockdown. You just have to deal with them now. There's no running away. And this is what I meant by solitude therapy. It's facing yourself by yourself.
So what is your story with, solitude therapy? What's your reflections with that?
Now, funnily enough, for me, it wouldn't actually be COVID. Because if I'm being honest, during COVID, it was more of the same for me. Like, it was kind of the same as every other day for me, because I basically spent all of my time indoors anyway and at my computer all the time anyway, and I guess the rest of the world just had to catch up with me. But I remember being stuck fresh after high school in an accidental gap year, not by choice. I don't want to get into the details there. And literally without a plan and nowhere to go and nothing to do. Now, I didn't decide to spend that year, finding myself in the great outdoors or traveling. No, I spent it alone with myself, thinking about who I actually am and confronting what I actually want. And it's a very powerful thing to be able to walk that journey in honesty with the person you know has your best interests at heart, with the person who understands you, yourself. And you're forced to confront so many of the fundamental truths about you and the place you're in a very kind of candid and honest way. I also got into that's funnily enough where I started developing and honing kind of like with a precise style and flourish my art. I started cultivating it during that time, me with myself.
Okay, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you still going on with your story. Well, with me, I would say it most of it, the whole thing with being alone, it like COVID-19. I'm a very, I can't really, okay, I'm gonna explain how my personality is like. I can easily gel, with the outside world, and I wouldn't say I'm an extrovert. I'm not really an extrovert, but I'm a combination of both. So sometimes I would want to be alone, and sometimes I would want to be out with people. And that takes me back when I was still in uni and staying at rest with my friends and all that. So I remember this when I had a single room. There were times where my friends would knock and I would just like keep quiet because I'm just not in the mood to be with anyone. Not that I have any beef with anyone, but I'm just like, right now, I just want to be alone. So I'm that kind of a person that has a good mixture in terms of my personality that I can actually adapt outside, and also sometimes or most of the time actually I'm literally like alone with my own thoughts. So now with COVID-19 happening, um, I've already gotten used to already being alone, and weekends I'd be working. Because at the time I was like going at the 9 to 5 job, and I was just busy. So now the 9 to 5 job is gone, and I'm just like all alone. It was a lot. I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot. I just felt like I'm in a prison, and I'm like, why can't I go out? Well, which of sometimes I feel like going out. So at that time, I'm like, why can't I go out? I just want to be outside. I just want to be around people. I just want to be with people. But now I'm just locked inside here, and I'm just suffocating. So there was that fear of being alone, because I think most of my life I've been alone. Growing up, I was the only child, and at some point I lost myself when I was like, the story when I was in high school, when I lost my self-esteem and all that. So most of the time then I had to be alone. I was alone rather, because I just couldn't, gel with other kids, or probably like, I just don't, I don't know. It just felt like it was better for me to be alone. And a lot of people actually, like a lot of older people from my hood would be even giving, their kids like, oh, you see the wah, like, they're always home and all that. But it was not by choice. It was just because I was going through a lot, and that's why I just didn't gel with other kids around where I grew up. And the fear of going back there it's something that keeps on haunting me, and it haunted me around the time of COVID-19. And that was like, shit, I don't want to be alone. And it was just so it was so scary for me, and I think it's still scary for me at times as well. I have been alone all my life basically, but the thought of forcefully, not really forcefully, but like when you're told you have to be alone, it just scares me. I have to be alone because I choose to be alone, but not when I say no. Now you have to be like I don't know, like if you have to be alone to heal. It just sounds so wrong for me. I don't know if I'm making sense. Like when you be like, okay, no, be alone now because you have to be alone so that you can heal, so that you can be better. For me, that sounds so wrong, but it's natural for me to be alone at most of the time, because most of the time I'm alone, and I've been alone now all my life. But now when I'm told to be alone, it's another thing. So that manifested so much during COVID-19, when, we were told that you have to be in your houses, you can't go out, you can't be going to visit people. That time I didn't even visit anyone, but it's just the thing of like, now it's like mandatory for not visiting people. And I had to face my own demons of being alone. And at the time, I think I was going through like a whole depressive moment as well with the work that I was doing. I was underworked, and I had issues with my dad that I felt at the time needed to be resolved. And I remember at the specific time that whole COVID was happening, I think I shared the story in one of the episodes around that time, at the time of COVID, before COVID started, I think. Also, I have a video online as well, that speaks of me crying at work and so around that time before COVID, or before we actually locked down, I was going through a whole phase of like, I remember this time, I don't know what was really happening, but I was having this strange loneliness, feeling like I needed my mom so bad. And the whole thing just felt like losing my mom happened that time. So I was just going through grief all over again that time. And it was like fresh grief out of the blue. And that grief sort of gravitated me going back and sorting things with my dad, because I just felt all alone, and I felt like mending my relationship with my dad would make me feel better, and it did at the time really make me feel better. But yeah, that is my experience with dealing with solitude. It's tricky for me. It makes my head crazy when I'm told you have to be alone, but I'm alone all the time.
Now that's very interesting. The idea that it can be an anxiety trigger for some, that solitude, even though it might be healing for you, it might be cathartic for you, it might help you confront things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to if you were facing, say, a therapist with with those truths. If, say, you were facing a doctor or a friend or a family member with those truths, you might not feel comfortable enough to go all the way to do the full work required of you to heal. Even if the solitude might be the best option for you, you might find yourself feeling very anxious and caged in. It might not be something that would work for you. And I'm gonna be honest, I know a lot of people where it would not work for them, and they will go crazy if they try it.
Definitely. Yeah, no, for me, that's the thing. I can do well alone. As I said, I've been alone all my life. But it's only when I'm told that you have to be alone that it just makes me go crazy. Like, why do I have to be alone? Now I feel so caged. Like, now all of a sudden I really want to be around people. I remember this one specific moment. I was around people, funnily enough, but I felt so alone because of the things that I was going through. That was around just post COVID-19. But we're still restricted, but not like that time wherein we couldn't really go out and meet people. So it was around 2021. I found myself in, this whole situation. 2021, guys, has been a mess. You can go through my old episodes. You're going to see the mess that was happening there. I have check-in episodes. Ciao. Okay. So yeah, I was going through that, and I felt so alone. At that time, I needed familiarity. Like, I just needed some sort of familiar spirit, and I don't know what exactly, but I needed something familiar to make me feel better. So I remember at that time I had one of my friends really supportive and there for me. April was quite like there for me in that space as well. But after that, I where I was, because I was staying with people at the same time, I just felt like, what, I then went to a cousin of mine, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just feel home in a way because I'm familiar with these people. And then I took that premature decision of moving in with them, which didn't really go that well, but it was a decision that was influenced by me feeling so alone, and wanting to have familiar faces, or I don't know, I just needed familiarity like in my life. I just needed something familiar to make me feel like, or to get me into track. Have you ever experienced something like that?
I would have to say that I probably have, but I wouldn't say that it was post-COVID. I'm trying to remember. Oh, yes. I remember now. This was like fresh after my breakdown back in 2018. And that was one of those confidence breaking moments in my life. And finding a space that does feel familiar, that feels normal, that feels like you are used to it, like it definitely gave me a sense of comfort that I desperately needed at the time. So I did kind of like backtrack through life a bit, I'm not gonna lie, and I was like reaching out to people from high school and the like.
I know
just
the feeling. I say I know the feeling.
Yeah, and I was reaching out to people from high school and such, and it was just for that sense of the familiar and the sense of belonging, you know. Because that breakdown at the end of 2018 was fresh after uni, so I don't know how to put it. It really had me feeling alienated from everyone in my life at that point. So I kind of started reaching for people from my past.
Just to feel, you know.
Yeah, that sense of familiar comfort.
Yeah. And that sort of creates codependency in a way, but we're going to get to that. So I'm going to be reading from enlightenedsolutions.com, The Importance of Solitude for Healing. So the article starts with, many of us are struggling with addictive behaviors and issues with our mental and emotional health, often find ourselves in toxic relationships, fear-based relationship patterns, and unhealthy interpersonal dynamics. Many of us have very hard extricating but ourselves from unhealthy relationships, and many of us fear being alone. Whatever our addiction story entails, many agree on just how hard it can be to be alone, and also on how important solitude is for healing. Well, I think this is quite a good introduction in this, you know, passage that I'm going to be reading. That, you know, you find yourself getting into is a lot of addictive behaviors because, you know, you're dealing with a lot of things. Like you want to substitute certain things, and now you find yourself doing certain addictive behaviors. I found myself in, you know, one of the times when I was like really, really, really depressed, and I had, you know, when I get really depressed, I have eczema breakout. So I found myself so dependent on weed. Like every day I needed weed for me to cope and for me to, because I was in pain, and it just was a lot. I needed weed, and it kind of backfired in a way, because like I remember, just to go to town, I needed to be high. And sometimes when you high, you just lost, like you feel lost, and it's just crazy to navigate the world. So I found myself in that addictive behavior. Have you ever found yourself in such, you know, where you find yourself in toxic relationships, fear-based relationship patterns, and healthy interpersonal dynamics?
Yeah, no, definitely. And what I find very interesting about this intro is the comparing that to addictive behaviors. And that's very interesting because a lot of people don't realize that the reason why you haven't realized that these relationships are as unhealthy as they are, these toxic relationships, these fear-based relationship patterns, the reason why you haven't noticed it and excised it or corrected it, the reason why you haven't is because you're addicted to it.
True.
You have become dependent on these patterns of behavior. They are normal to you to the point where you do not know how to separate them from your reality. This is normal to you. This is your life now. You just are you're part of this reality where, yes, you are going to be dealing with, say, people in your life who put you down on a regular basis, and that to you is normal, and you become normalized to it to the point where it's the only way you know how to engage.
Definitely. I think that's where you find yourself in, you know, very toxic relationships, not necessarily romantic relationships, but also just friendships as well, because you are just going through the most and you're trying to deal with your issues. You might just find yourself pulling up with, you know, shit, really, like you might just like putting up with shit. That's what I meant. Putting up with a lot of shit from people because you just can't let them go in a way, because it just feels like if you let them go, then you're gonna be alone. Then you're not gonna have anyone to, you know, to I don't know, somewhat. And I think I struggled with that as well. There was a time when I spoke about friendships and how your friendships change really. Sometimes you find friends that are there for a season, and you struggle to let go when that season ends with that particular person, because it's like, okay, I'm so used to be around this person, but now the season has ended. There's nothing that really puts us together. Oh, sometimes you haven't even fought. It's just you're no longer connecting as you were, but you find yourself forcing, those kind of things, those kind of relationships into your life because you're so used to them. So I think for me, I could relate back when my self-esteem was a bit very, very low. And then I didn't really have friends and all that. And I think, but I substituted that with, this whole, how do I put it? This imaginary relationships that I would have. And that is a very unhealthy interpersonal dynamics, really, because you now can't actually have relationships in real life because you think that your reality is quite real, and it's so real to you that you struggle to even make real, meaningful relationships with real people. And that's what we struggle most in this day and age of social media, where people socialize on social media, and it just becomes a norm to a sense that you feel like talking to someone on social media, you've communicated, and no, you haven't.
Yeah, that's not a real human connection. Sorry guys, that's not a real human connection. This isn't to say that the people you meet on social media don't have meaning in your life. They can have meaning in your life, but it's not real. Like, you need to understand that it's not real.
Definitely, because I feel like social media has taken away that whole thing of creating authentic relationships with people and being able to engage with people in person. And we usually, like now as I'm talking to you, listening to me right now, think about it. How many people have you spoken to, in person? Unless you are forced to go out to work, like maybe you go to the office and all that. But if you're working from home, how many people have you actually communicated with, outside from the people probably that you live with, or if you live alone? And, how many people have you communicated with? Not on Zoom, not on WhatsApp, but like in real life. So it really takes away that whole interpersonal, dynamics. People can now communicate in person, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
No, I definitely understand that. Now, see, here's one other thing I would like to add, right? Just to get back to the topic itself. Social media has taken away from people what I think would have been the historically normal period of time in the day for that solitude, right? Because now you get this fake sense of social interaction that's constant, instead of having those moments in the day where you are just forced to be with yourself. Now that doesn't exist, because you can just pick up your phone and there's the entire world just waiting to hear what you have to say. And that's not helpful. That's not healthy.
Definitely. So the article goes, when in a codependent relationship, it can be easy to forsake some of your identity for the sake of partnership. Well, before I go on, codependency is a thing, guys. Like, some people can't live with certain people, and that's wrong. If you can't function without certain people, then that's wrong. I think I've learned that through my journey, as I said, with the low self-esteem and just being codependent to certain people that I had at the time. And I had learned that, when people leave, they let them go. If don't be too dependent to a relationship that it's just so easy for you to forsake some of your identity for the sake of this partnership.
I think the one thing which struck me the hardest, as someone who had been in a codependent relationship, ask yourself this question. If you are in just about any of your interpersonal relationships, be they friendships, be they romantic relationships, as strange as it may sound, even work relationships, Ask yourself this question. Can you be happy if they aren't? The answer should be yes. It is possible for you to experience happiness even when they're not happy. The answer should be yes. And if it isn't, something is very wrong.
Definitely. So for some of us, we give up our identities entirely and the relationship is our main focal point. Or worse, our obsession. Okay, I'm just going to go step by step because these are very important, pointers. Losing your identity entirely, that's wrong. I'm more of a thing of I've always pushed that also in the relationships that I put, that if I'm in a relationship, also just a friendship or romantic or whatever that is, the relationship is not about one person. It's about two people. And it's not about, you should still have your identity still. And the relationship should embrace your identity. Both identities should be embraced in that relationship. But when you feel that that relationship is constantly taking away your identity and you have to, make the other party happy and make the other party, focusing on mostly the other party. It's more of an obsession, really. It's not a healthy relationship.
And I mean, even worse is the inverse. If you're the person trying to change or control what the other person is, then now this is shifting from obsession to controlling. And that's also unhealthy. Don't be erasing other people's identities either.
Definitely. So it can be nearly impossible to focus on your own healing when thinking of yourself, not as an individual self, but as this other person's partner. Definitely. That I agree 100%. So as I said, in a relationship, you have to be yourself, and it's a relationship that focuses on two people. And if it's focusing on two people, it shouldn't really about now you thinking more about what the other person and what the other person, it should be our interest, our passions, our goals, our dreams, not their dream, their passion, what they want, their pleasure. No, then that's wrong. So, yeah, what do you think?
I think the simplest way to describe the way I think about it is a lot of people get it wrong when they're like, your soulmate, you and your soulmate are two halves of a whole. No, that's stupid and terrible. You are two wholes. You are two individuals. That's it. You are two whole people who are adding to each other's lives. You are not filling a gap in someone's life. That is not your purpose.
Definitely.
You are not put on this earth to fill a gap in someone else's life.
Definitely. And that also goes to that thing of you make me happy. Well, yes, someone can make you happy, but are you still happy when they're not there? That should be the question. So you should still be happy when they're not there, because now your happiness shouldn't be there, shouldn't be based on, it should be a codependent kind of thing, like that you are happy because they are around. People die, that's part of life. So when people die, are you going to be sad? Your life's not going to go on. So think about that. Or, life goes on, as I said, sometimes, you don't even fight. You just, as friends, I don't know, you just no longer connect.
Yeah, you outgrow each other. It happens, guys. It really does happen. You outgrow some people in life. It's normal.
Definitely. So it says we must start to think of ourselves only in terms of the relationship rather than all the things that made up our personality before relationship, our interests and passions, our goals and dreams. Instead, we have become simply this person's partner. Our true self no longer exists for us. So the problems in the relationships become all consuming, and we become simply this person's sorry I'm reading that again. The problems in the relationship become all consuming, and we constantly prioritize the other person and the relationship over our own health, wellness, even safety. Perhaps we totally lose interest in our lives, that's dangerous. So it is quite important. And I think, solitude, that's where solitude is quite important. That's where you need to find who you are. Sometimes a lot of people can't define who they are without other people. Their definition of themselves comes with certain people being part of their life. And when we ask you, who are you? They don't know. So you must be able to define who you are. And that is only can be possible when you spend time on your own. I think most of the time that I've spent time on my own, mostly not voluntarily and voluntarily rather, yeah, mostly voluntarily kind of, helped me to learn a lot more about myself and unlearn a lot of, things about myself as well. So I became a bit wiser when it comes to relationships and what in fact I want my relationships to look like, because coming from low self-esteem, I would just take anything that comes my way. And now I was learning, you can't just take any kind of you can't just take any kind of treatment from people because whatever reason that you can make up for yourself. I then put, I had my self-worth kind of thing that, what, this is where I draw the line. If you're going to treat me like this, then there's nothing then. Like, we have nothing to talk about. Like, I'm ready to end friendships. I'm ready to end relationships if you're going to treat me this way, because these are my boundaries.
There's so much to be said for the value of that solitude, that being able to spend time with yourself, discovering who you are. You can also figure out, like Ndi was saying, those boundaries, those limits, the outer limits of what you are willing to tolerate. Now imagine trying to navigate what you're willing to tolerate when you don't even know who you are. That's near impossible. You'll never be able to figure out what you can do
Definitely.
if all you're doing is following what everyone else is doing. So a lot of times, especially in codependent relationships, you end up being guided by the other party.
Definitely. So it goes on and says the status of our relationships determines our self-worth. I was just talking about that. And if we are at odds in our partnership and we don't have strength of our inner power to bolster us, we just fall apart. We analyze everything through the lens of the relationship and prioritize the conflict, the issues, the drama over our own inner peace. And as I said, self-worth is quite important. For me, self-worth is really, really important. And that is something I got when I had to spend time alone, when I spent time alone, introspecting what I actually really want for myself. I had a whole time, because now I had this season where I struggled to make relationships. Really, I was just like, okay, no, I'm struggling to find people that have the right intentions and I think along that time, I then took a break and said, you know what, I need time to myself, right? And I need to figure out who I am, what do I want, and what is it that I stand for. Because I think at that point where I had low self-esteem, I just went with whatever, I just, wanted to be a cool person that, the other person would be like, oh, you're really cool, like all that. But now I was like, I don't want to be cool for you. If I'm just being me, then there will be people that will gravitate towards me, that will understand who I am without me trying so much of what I'm not. Because now when I'm trying so much that I'm not, I'm losing a lot of myself along the way. And I don't want to lose myself along the way. So I try to prioritize my own self in the sense that I didn't want to lose, my inner power. And that helped me not to fall apart. So, but they say that we analyze everything through the lens of the relationship, prioritize conflict, issues, and drama. Some people just like conflict. Some people just like drama. And when we are looking, relationships in that, when we are looking in the lens of the relationship, but not in the lens of our own self-worth, that's when we will prioritize other people's love of conflict. There are people that just want drama. They they get bored in a relationship that does not have any drama. So they want that element of drama, that like the element of issues, that element of conflict that gives the oomph to the relationship. But if that's not you, then why try to like, you end up actually looking in the sense of like, okay, this person is always like that. Let me just, I don't know, you end up feeding them whatever they wanted in that sense of like drama and conflicts and issues.
I have been stifling laughter this entire time because this specific last sentence, it feels so very specific. Like that feels very specific. But yes, when you start effectively viewing your own worth as the place you occupy in a relationship, you'll start doing things unconsciously without knowing it to satisfy the needs or wants of the other person. You're not doing it on purpose at this point, right? Because it's about feeding your own sense of self-worth at this point. Yes. So now, going back to what I was saying earlier when I asked, can you be happy when the other person isn't happy? And if the answer is no, something is wrong. This is what I mean, right here. If them being upset means you have to be upset now too, something has gone wrong. If them feeling like shit means you now have to feel like shit, like you now have to hate yourself, something is wrong. And it's so easy to slip into that cycle once again without even noticing it. But I want to say something before we move on, that it doesn't necessarily mean that, and I want this to be abundantly clear. I don't know, I keep playing devil's advocate when I'm out here, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the person you've built this unhealthy attachment to is some villain you need to... No, they're not. It's not that they're a bad person. Okay, you've just built an unhealthy relationship with them. And you can correct this, but the only way that you will ever be able to figure out where to start in mending or creating a kind of more healthy set of boundaries and limits is if you gain the perspective from outside that relationship, which means you need to remove yourself from that inner conflict, from the inner workings of the relationship. You need time to yourself to see the relationship for what it actually is and how it actually works. This is the value of that solitude.
Definitely. So as we continue to generate more inner turmoil, we come to see that our circumstances are reflecting that turmoil. Eventually, for many of us, we feel enough is enough, and that we can no longer withstand it. And that is when we opt for what many of us knew we needed all along: solitude. And I think I relate so much to that. I had a lot of, inner turmoil around the time when I found myself, like, as I said, the time of high school, I was alone and I couldn't really make relationships with people. And I struggled making actual relationships with people. That meant now starting to make relationship with people meant sort of like I didn't know my identity kind of. So I had to like gel in, kind of like want to look cool, kind of like, losing myself along the way. But that also just felt like, enough is enough as well. I'm losing myself and this is not working out as well. I'm projecting and always meeting the wrong people as well. And now I just want to be me. I just want to do things the best way I can. And I remember very well when that began. It was when I started this podcast as the Evolve Talk. It was a time where I was taking a stand and I wanted to make things right with myself, a relationship with myself. The first very episode was on validation. I had a huge problem with validation. I think validated, something along validations. I don't quite remember the title, but it's on the first episode of the Evolve Talk. It's on validation. And I was speaking on that because it was something close to what exactly I was going through. I needed a lot of validation from social media. I needed validation from people around me. and then would mean that I'm losing my authentic self through that whole journey of me wanting validation from people. So now when I started the podcasting, it was of me taking that time to actually be alone and unravel my inner thoughts with you guys. Honestly, that's how I did it, because I needed therapy, and I thought not the only way, but I thought the way that would work for me is to start speaking as someone who was not articulate enough to articulate what they wanted to say at the time. Not that I was never articulate. I was at some point articulate, but because of the low self-esteem, that killed every articulacy that I have. So I needed to build that back, my confidence back. I need to build that back. And that meant putting myself on the spot and going on live on Facebook and, starting these conversations with you guys. Uncomfortable conversations, honestly. Very, very open and very naked conversations, really.
That is actually a very powerful thing. It is very difficult to willingly choose to engage with yourself by yourself. It isn't always that easy to be like, okay, all of these things that I've gotten used to have now caused me so much kind of like unspeakable inner conflict that I have to remove myself. And fact is, as the article says, this will eventually happen if you are in an unhealthy situation, an unhealthy interpersonal relationship. You will reach that point where from frustration, you are either going to escalate conflicts with this other party, or you are going to withdraw and choose solitude. And I would rather say go with the solitude than the conflict. But it never seems that easy in the moment, does it? Because this is now you telling, say it's a romantic partner. This is now you telling your romantic partner that, no, I don't want to come over. I just want time alone. Like, that doesn't really seem like an easy conversation to have. Now, does it?
No.
That you keep canceling plans because you just want to be alone.
Yeah, but I also feel that if ever you are in a romantic setup, it's always important for you to set your tone. For me, it's quite important. Set your tone in what you'd want for yourself. Put yourself first, obviously. Before the relationship, there was you. That relationship it's not you. It's something that came after. That person you met way, way, way after your life. Like, you didn't, you know what I'm saying? So you way, 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 way after, like, you have grown, had kids and all that, whatever. But now you have to have a real conversation with yourself and the person that you are seeing romantically, or you are planning to see romantically. And that conversation should be a very, very honest chat with yourself and that person, that, these are my boundaries. This is what, my self-worth. This is where, where we don't cross the line, honestly. Like, if this comes, like, we don't cross that line. So it is quite important for you to have that conversation with your friends, like, not necessarily romantic partners only, with your friends as well. There are certain boundaries that your friends shouldn't cross, and you must have that conversation. How do I mean? Don't just like cancel plans and like, no, I can't see you, no, I can't come, I want to be alone. That's so vague. Be honest and like, okay, no, I don't want to come because this is how I feel right now. Be honest with yourself, and ultimately you're going to be honest with the people that you meet, and don't worry much about what the other person is going to feel by your honesty, because real people are going to understand you. That's what I've learned in life, that if a person's not going to understand you, then let them go. And things have been really going smooth for me in that kind of mentality, that if I'm going to explain my thinking, and not saying that always my thinking is right, there's always room of relearning and learning, that it's still there, right? But now if I say that these are my boundaries, this, and that person doesn't understand, I'm not going to sacrifice myself. I think I've spoken, actually realizing that I've used this podcast as one of the conversations with myself. Most of the topics, when you look back then, it's really conversations with myself and trying to figure out, myself and my self-worth.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. I guess I'm gonna work backwards. Yeah. This is oddly enough, I would have to say, kind of like a journaling endeavor. I know I personally got into recording. Primarily, I was making video diaries, and I was addressing them as letters to myself in the future for me to see later. Just discussing where I am in that moment and the journey that I'm on. So this is what I mean when I talk about these discussions with yourself in spaces of solitude are therapeutic, because it's with the one person who already understands you. You don't need to be explaining volumes of experiences to yourself. You were there. You know about those past experiences. You know how they shaped you. You don't need to explain that to you. You don't need to explain why you reacted to something the way that you did to yourself, because you know exactly what piece of trauma made you react the way that you did. You know. But being able to reflect on that honestly is vital to understanding yourself better and growing from the incidences and moments in our lives. And it's something that's very hard to do when you are constantly having your perspective of yourself being reshaped by the people around you. And this is why solitude is vital.
Definitely. I think you mentioned something very important that I've used with me as well. Like, when you explain a lot, you over-explain, then know something is wrong there. So you don't have to over-explain a lot to people. The time you find yourself over-explaining, no, there's something wrong. You need to just walk away from that situation, because you can't be over-explaining. If they can't get it, they will never get it. So the right people will get it. Like, you won't have to over-explain anything. They will just get it. So gravitate towards people that really get it, not, force people to get it, force people to understand you, force people to understand your experience, force people to not everyone's going to like you. I just saw a random video this other time on how people perceive you, what perceptions people have of you. People have different perceptions of you, some good, some bad, and that's all okay. Not everyone is going to have the best experience of you, and that is all good, really. You can't please everyone, and I've got into that space of you can't please everyone. Some people are going to be happy with you, some people are going to have beef with you. There are people that when you say, oh, do you know her? That one, chap, and some are like, oh no, she's a sweetheart and all that. And it's okay. Those ones who are they have their own reasons, some valid, some not valid. Anyways, it's whatever. You just have to gravitate to those that understand, and yourself most importantly, because you don't necessarily have to over explain anything to yourself. So in the closing, solitude can be daunting and even terrifying when you have been emotionally dependent upon other people for so long, but allows you to do the hard work of going inward to process your pain and fears. So sit with yourself and grow stronger in your sense of self, to ground and center yourself in your purpose, and your time in solitude can help you discover new healing tools you might not otherwise have been open to receiving. Be brave and know you have power to do what is best for yourself. And honestly, this journey was through, I learned that whole thing when I started the Evolve Talk. They evolved, growing, becoming the best version of myself. When I started the whole thing, really, it was that moment of I needed solitude. I needed to gain back my confidence, and I had to deal with my inward pain and fear. And my fears were really now, for someone who didn't really have a problem speaking in public, but for somewhat at that moment, my confidence was gone. So I struggled with, articulacy, meeting people and having conversations, proper conversations, articulating what I mean, having public presentations, whatever. I struggled with that. And now I put myself on the spot, put myself live on. I was alone, anyways, but this is like going on air, like everyone's going to see it, and it's just like, you know what? I'm just gonna be myself. Sometimes I'm not gonna be able to pronounce certain words. I'm not gonna be perfect. I'm not even gonna try to be perfect if I can't pronounce what you even heard. I couldn't pronounce some word here, and I honestly don't care. I don't. So I'm not English. I would always say, guys, I'm learning and I'm always open to learning. So I'm not going to like beat myself around and try to be a perfectionist. As you learn, you're going to make mistakes, and that's how you learn. You learn through your mistakes. So I allowed myself to make the mistakes while putting myself at the spot. I put myself at the spot. Second year of my varsity, ran for SRC. I was articulate. I didn't have, like, my confidence, whatever, but I just put myself in the spot, and I learned, through the journey of that whole thing. And that whole journey of me putting myself in the spot, right now, I'm a DI specialist because of that. So it is quite important sometimes to just put yourself in the spot of solitude and allow to learn yourself, allow yourself to make mistakes. Sometimes we become so perfectionist to a point we don't want to make mistakes. Even we beat ourselves around for making mistakes and for failing. Like, sometimes relationships not working out. Sometimes you don't want relationships not failing out because that would make you feel like a failure. Honey, if it's not working out, just not working out. And I'm not going to feel like a failure for something not working out. If it didn't work out, it didn't work out. We move, honestly. But obviously, the we move can be quite dangerous as well, because sometimes people don't want to deal with the inward, and process their pain that whatever situation or relationship took them. So as much as we're going to move, you need to deal with that pain and fear that you had to endure. And yeah, so that's how I've been dealing with things, really.
There's just one thing I wanted to say, one last thing I wanted to say. As a caution against solitude, I know it sounds strange after all of the promoting the idea of solitude as a means of confronting yourself in the situations that you're in and confronting the value of the relationships you have and you've built. There is reason to maybe pause on solitude. There is reason to hesitate a bit when it comes to solitude, and that might be that you might become, how do I say this? All things in moderation, a bit too indulgent in your approach to solitude, a bit too self-fulfilling, so to speak. It's very easy to get stuck in the cycle of always looking inward without taking the time to look outward. There is value in other people. You can't live like a monk in isolation for your entire life. That is weird. Do not do that, please. Other people can be the path towards your growth and your better understanding of yourself. In fact, I would say that in my life, most of the most apparent moments of growth started with some form of engagement or confrontation with another person, and then was followed by a period of solitude where I got to reflect on those experiences with other people. So please do not take this to mean that you should be alone all the time, but make time to be with yourself.
Definitely. As you said, a little too much of anything can be bad for you, really. So if you are too much alone, you could find yourself really getting lost in reality of what the world around you is like. So hence, I think I gave you how I dealt with it. I had a time alone, and I also put myself in the spot. And putting myself in the spot now, I was dealing with people in a way, but like now that was my way of dealing with things. You can find your way of dealing with things. Could be therapy, going to therapy, really speaking to someone, to a professional. That is one way to deal with your inner, your inner self, rather. So that could be a way. It's part of solitude, really. I don't know if you think the same.
I do definitely feel the same way. Like, if you were to say go to therapy or I know for some people they would say, maybe speaking to their pastor, you take that experience with the therapist, with your pastor, or with whoever this other party is. You take that experience with you into your solitude, and and you meditate on it, and you let yourself grow in that space with those experiences, with that knowledge that you gained from those interactions outside.
Definitely. Well, this has been quite an insightful conversation. I really hope that you took time to actually look inside. That okay, what is it that you need to change about yourself, and have that conversation with yourself. Are you having healthy relationships? Are those people around you, worth being around you? Or like, you need to reconsider certain people. And relationships, are those relationships worth mending, or rather just let go? That you need to, only if you have time on your own, and sit down, or like go to therapy and try to figure out, because therapy really is therapy is you. When you go to therapy, a lot of people have this idea that therapists will be like, giving you advices on what to do and all that. What they would do is to facilitate an environment that you are able to open up to you, and they just are facilitating that whole process of you looking deep into yourself, and they also just facilitate what you want to do. Most of the time they ask you, what do you think would work best for you? And they probably can give, advices on how to deal with other certain things, but mostly it's what you'd want to do at the end of the day. So yeah, I think that would be also a great idea. Just do what works for you in order to find you, because you need you. Like, as much as, there are certain people, like you have kids, you have people around you so close to you, they love you, they need you, but those people need you in one piece, like really healthy and with good mental whatever. Because now, if your mental health is like fucked up, you also fuck them up, because you are not in good state. And sometimes you fuck them up not intentionally, stuff that, because you're dealing with a lot of interpersonal issues that you actually have to deal with. So yeah, this is it for today. What do you guys think? What are your reflections with the topics, with the topic that we were talking on today? Share with us. Let us know what you guys think. Let us know what your own experiences are with solitude. And we are going to the last segment of the show, which is gratitude. Let's go to the last segment of the show. Welcome back to gratitude. And so this week I am, as I said, we were talking about moving and all of that. So I'm really grateful for life. That is one thing I would ever be grateful for. And clarity. Having clarity is a privilege, really, knowing exactly where you are in life, because a lot of people are just leaving and kind of not know where their life is going and where it's coming from and what to do and all that. And having that clarity, for me, it's really something I'm grateful for. It's something I seeked already. Like I seek clarity, and that's something you can do for yourself as well. Seeking clarity, and you can't ever get enough clarity. Sometimes you get the clarity, and sometimes it's a continuous kind of activity that you'd have to do with yourself. It won't always be good, it won't always be nice, but when it's nice, I think we have said it in the last episode, enjoy and bask in the moment when it's bad. Also learn from that season of not nice things, because last episode we were talking about new beginnings. There are new beginnings that are not nice, new beginnings that are nice. So while they are nice, enjoy. While they're not, also observe and learn. So I'm at that point where I have clarity, and I'm grateful for that. and just a roof to lie under. It's quite something that I'm grateful for. And yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for great company as well. So yeah, no, man, I'm truly truly grateful for people around me, my friends, family that I talk to. I'm really really grateful because those are the people that when you need advice, different friends have different purposes, honestly, and I've got to understand that this friend is there for this kind of thing, and I really don't take things so much serious. Like, life for me is very laid back, and I don't take life that serious. It's all in the mind, and that helps me get through with life.
Okay, what am I grateful for? I'm grateful for, as strange as it may sound, my safety. I'm grateful for my health. We're just gonna put a question mark above that and leave that there. Like, hey guys, you learn to be grateful for things when they're, at risk of being gone. So just like, I'm grateful, question mark. I'm grateful for this place, even though yes, this place does still need a bit of work, and like the floor space is so much bigger than the last place, and now I'm realizing like, hey, we can furnish this place like with bigger stuff. I'm grateful for that. Just big place. I'm grateful for the opportunity to, this is gonna sound a bit weird, make right some of the wrongs of my past. Like, I don't want to get too much into specifics, but I very recently got to mending a relationship with a cousin of mine, and got to really reflect on kind of the brat I used to be. And that's the best way I know how to explain it. I used to be a brat, very, very obnoxious, and I don't want to say toxic, but just more annoying than toxic. And I'm grateful that I've at least realized that now, and I'm growing in that regard. And even moreover, that I still have the opportunity to make amends for it. I'm grateful for that. And I have been trying to rebuild the bridges I burnt prematurely out of petty childish spite. And you're still listening to Genesis Speaks.
So thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Do make sure to send us your thoughts around the topics that we are talking about. It's getting really deep, and we are getting towards the end of the season, by the way. This is episode 17, but the last episode is episode 20. So we are getting closer and closer to the end of season 8. What a season it was. And yeah, I'm looking forward to enjoying the last bits of the room, because this is really the remainder of the season, and we want to enjoy with you. What do you want us to talk about next? What are your thoughts around the things that we've discussed before? Let us know. So thank you so much for listening, and catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.